Well, what about the Republican movement here? I'm delighted to say I'm joined by two members of the Australians for a Constitutional Monarchy. David Flint, Professor David Flint, was pretty much the key figure who ran the campaign in 1999, which led to a massive victory for the monarchist movement in this country. David Flint, Professor David Flint, it's great to see you. Very sad day. If you can just give us your thoughts straight up, Professor Flint.
Well, it is a remarkably sad day. It was inevitable, of course, but I did not expect it so soon. But what has come out of this day is the enormous reflection of people, not only in Britain and the Commonwealth, but throughout the world, the enormous respect everybody seems to have had for the Queen, for such matters as decency and for her sense of service, which she always did with a touch of humour. And that service really went right back to the age when she was 21. And I remember that. I remember that speech from Cape Town where she said those extraordinary words, and who would have expected then that she would fulfil those to the letter. And I remember too seeing her on that day she came into Sydney Harbour, and what a refreshing, wonderful sight that was, and how the Australian people rejoiced in seeing her. We had over 70% of the Australian people out to see her, and she looked magnificent, and she has always behaved magnificently. And I think we really have benefited enormously from this lady who has been such a great queen. A queen described in one book as the queen of the world. And I think
absolutely
the description about people that Nigel Farage mentioned, that people all seem to think of her as their queen.
Absolutely. Now also here is Alexandra Marshall, who is a young ambassador for the Australians for Constitutional Monarchs. So, Alexandra, there have been it's great to hear Professor Flint's words there. He won the 1999 Republican referendum, but the Republicans never give up. There are some who have sought to completely politicise the events today, the death of the Queen. Adam Bant, for instance, has tweeted out, "Now Australia must move forward. We need treaty with First Nations people and we need to become a republic." And we had Maureen Faruqi, also of the Greens. Quote, "I cannot mourn the leader of a racist empire built on stolen lives, stolen land and the wealth of colonised peoples." Australian Greens, you lot are a disgrace. Alexandra Marshall, what did you make of that?
Well, I thought the Greens shamed themselves terribly this morning. They didn't even wait 24 minutes after the Queen's passing to start the Republican debate up again and to use politics at a time when the nation and indeed the entire Commonwealth is mourning. So I thought that was disgraceful, and they've carried on this behaviour for the rest of the day, so they haven't learnt their lesson. And that's what we have to look forward to now that we have King Charles instead of Queen Elizabeth. They feel that it's time to change our system of government, and I think they're wrong. The youth of today aren't as keen on changing back as the Greens hope they are.
Well, David, I'd like to ask you this, Professor Flint. Do you need to get back in the saddle again and fight the Republicans all over again? Are we going to see, possibly in the next term of government, if Labor wins again, another push for a Republican referendum? What's your take on the mood in the electorate? You alone virtually picked that the Australian people, majority in each state and a majority of the states, would vote to remain with a constitutional monarchy. Do you think we're still in the same position today, and that the bloke with the red bandana and the Malcolm Turnbull and the rest of them are just the same abnormally they were last time round?
I think, Rowan, that a campaign properly run, as the last one was, will result in an even bigger victory than in 1999. The government would be foolish, I think, to try and put the model which the Republican movement has come up with and the same model that they used on the last occasion, because neither of them provide the guarantees, the checks and balances which are necessary in our Westminster system of government, and that's the problem. Each time they produce a model, and they've only produced 3 in 30 years, each one has proved a distinct failure. If they were to produce something better than we have today, then obviously people would look at it. But they're not prepared to do that. They say that only in a republic can we get an Australian as a head of state. They have to say something. Previously, Mr. Grasby said that the republic would cure unemployment, and the Crown had created unemployment. Their reasons became so ridiculous, they fell on this esoteric term, head of state, and they decided to centre their whole argument on that. The fact is, we are already a republic. We are a commonwealth, which is the English word for republic. We are a crowned republic. What they are offering is a politicians' republic in which the power of the politicians will be increased. The latest model that they released some months ago does away completely with the role of the president being a constitutional guardian, and the requirement that the president provide leadership above politics is lost completely by holding an election and by the choice of candidates being done by political deals between the politicians. They will produce an inferior model. The Australian people will sniff that out very quickly and they will go to a greater defeat than in 1999 if they are so foolish as to put another referendum.
So, Alexandra, you're a young ambassador for constitutional monarchy.
Bit of a stretch.
Do people understand what a constitutional monarchy is? Or, as John Howard was suggesting, is the personality and character of that monarch critical to people, the public's emotions?
I don't have much faith that the youth of today understand their political systems at all, let alone the complexities of a constitutional monarchy, which is a big problem because David Flint's arguments are perfectly sound and you can easily win an argument against a rational person with them. However, we live in an emotional age, and so the next referendum is going to be one, sadly, on emotion. But the good news is that although we have the nasty TikTok generation, which I'm sure by now everyone has either spoken about or seen what's occurring on social media, there's another generation beneath them, a younger generation, and they have seen the monarchy as a sense of permanence and of duty and of service, and they don't get that from their other role models. And so they have seen that in the Queen and they see it in Kate and William, and they've liked that. They like that. And so there's a resurgence in monarchy sympathies in the younger generation.
Professor Flint and Alexandra Marshall, thank you both so much for coming on.